My name's Alexis Muller, and I am the founder of Hawaii Cannabis Expert. And I'm here to present the potency of knowledge, so elevating cannabis consumer value. I have a master's in medical cannabis science and therapeutics from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And our agenda today is going to be meeting me. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. What is cannabis? We're going to go over the history of cannabis, nature's chemistry. We're going to look into cannabinoids and terpenes, explore the entourage effect, look into the endocannabinoid system, so how and why cannabis works in our body, and then the art of choosing cannabis. And we're going to apply the entourage effect and look at what's the value of potency, and then we'll end in our summary of our high points. So once again, my name is Alexis Muller, and I'm the founder of Hawaii Cannabis Expert. The reason why I founded Hawaii Cannabis Expert is I noticed that there was a large gap in standardized education in the cannabis industry. We have recommending providers, and then we have them issuing 329 cards to patients, and then that patient walks into the dispensary and they pretty much don't have any knowledge about cannabis and why am I choosing to use this medicine and what is its efficacy. We basically have just been told to just purchase cannabis based off of its THC potency and not really know why. So that's why I founded Hawaii Cannabis Expert. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I am not a nurse. I am not a doctor. This is all public knowledge. So I'm just here to, again, elevate your experience as a consumer in the cannabis industry. So what is cannabis? We're going to just go ahead and start right off and get to the nomenclature in the cannabis industry. It can be really misleading. Who here has shopped in a dispensary before or bought a product? Who's been told to look for an indica or a sativa or a hybrid, right? What do those words really mean? Well, indica, sativa, and hybrid really just identifies what the plant looks like while it's growing. So it represents what the genus looks like. So in the sativa plant, we can see that the sativa plant's going to grow tall and be more like lanky, right? It's also going to determine its flowering time. Is that going to be a longer flowering time or a shorter flowering time? Indicas are more short and bushy, and they have a shorter flowering time. So, and then we have rudarilis. Rudarillises are not so much in the, I guess I would say the legal or recreational or medicinal market as much. Who's familiar with autoflowers? So autoflowering would be a cross of a rudarilis and a sativa or an indica. And the reason why we would use a rudarilis is that they basically just automatically flower, so we don't have to control their environment. But so as a consumer, when you're walking in and saying those words, they don't really have any meaning except for what that plant looks like. What we really want to look at is the chemical makeup of the flower, right? Cannabis is going to be made of hundreds of compounds, and we're going to talk about those in this presentation. That's what's going to bring value to you as a consumer. To look today and where we stand in the cannabis industry, I think we need to go back in history. And this is really important because cannabis comes with a stigma, right? And as educators in this industry, I'm here to break that stigma. I'm here to normalize cannabis use and to make sure that everybody that wants to have access to the plant has safe access to the plant. I'm very humbled to be in this industry. I never forget where I came from and that who is sitting in jail before me and who's paved the path before me. And that's really important to remember because there are still individuals that are in prison or jail because of cannabis. So we want to take a look at the history. And cannabis has a very deep-rooted history in our culture. We know that cannabis has many uses. It's been used as fiber, food, and then medicine. We can look back and look at archaeological dig sites, and we can see that cannabis is present throughout the world. So it's shown up in many different cultures. The Chinese cultures, Indian, Ayurvedics, Egyptians, and Greek gods use cannabis. And we know this because we can see it in their archaeological dig sites, right? Most importantly, I think, the Chinese, they were the first to present a written documentation of cannabis use as a medicine in the Chinese pharmacopoeia. And that dates back to 25 to 2800 BCE. So that's really important. Cannabis has been used as a medicine for thousands of years throughout cultures across the world. Primarily that we can see documented, cannabis was used for the treatment of gout, rheumatoid arthritis, malaria. This one really makes me laugh. It was used for poor memory. Eye pain, inflammation, and ear problems. Moving forward into more recent times, there were two really powerful sources that contributed to sideline cannabis as a medicine, and that was anti-immigrant fever and the invention of the pill. So if you think about it, bare aspirin was only invented in the 1800s, the 1890s. So what did we use as medicine prior to that? We've forgotten that as a culture of people in healing. Also, again, there's a lot of information to say, but Harry Anslinger is the gentleman who was behind the anti-immigrant fever. So cannabis and that stigma has been rooted in racism, and that plant has been misinterpreted and misrepresented. In 1971, cannabis is classified as a Schedule I drug, and that's really important because that brings us to where we stand today. It means, Schedule I means that it has a high potency for abuse, and it has no medicinal value. And we absolutely know that cannabis has medicinal value, and the latter could be discussed deeper. Today, we know that there's about, in the US alone, 35 million users a month of cannabis. And I did a little bit of research, and I found that they're estimating maybe, billions around the world who use cannabis. So we definitely know this medicine's being used across the globe. Right now, we have 38 states and 3 territories that allow for medical use of cannabis products in some capacity, and this number is always changing. I didn't fully update. I think Ohio is the last to go rec, but there's 24 states plus DC and 2 territories that have enacted adult use for non-medical use. So that means we have recreational use, in these more than half of the United States. So nature's chemistry. So what is cannabis made up of? So we do know that cannabis is a plant from Mother Nature, and so that means that it is pretty much going to do what it wants to do, but we as humans have manipulated cannabis, and that's what you see in cultivation today. But we're basically taking Mother Nature and we're manipulating it into kind of what we want it to be, but its true root is nature. And we can only manipulate it so much. So the cannabis plant is extremely complex, and it's a diverse organism. And its composition includes various compounds that contribute to its unique properties. It's made up of hundreds of compounds, and those include cannabinoids, terpenes, polyphenols, flavonoids, lipids, proteins, and enzymes. So it's not just one compound medicine. It's very multifaceted. There's hundreds of them. So the combination and concentration of these components can vary between different strains and types of cannabis plants. So that's why you get a varied and a wide range of effects from and characteristics associated with different plants. That's another point to note. Again, there's a lot of information, but as a consumer, it's important to know that each time that we harvest a cannabis plant or a crop, that chemical makeup is going to be different. The cannabis plant is responding to its external environment, right? So we want to remember that it's not we're not going to have the same effect every time. And so we want to remember that cannabis is a very individualized medicine. It's a personal journey that we go on with medicine, and that's kind of part of the psychoactivity as well, right? Like, how do we look at ourselves as human beings? How do we help ourselves on our healing journey? And that's, what this knowledge is important for, is being in charge of our own health and our own medicine and what we're putting into our bodies. So we're going to take a look at one of the compounds that makes up cannabis, and we're all familiar with cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are a class of chemical compounds that interact with the endocannabinoid system in the human body. And we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system today. It's very complex, so we're just going to go surface level. I have booth 102, so if you have more questions, we can dig a little deeper. But that's where I get chicken skin when we talk about the endocannabinoid system, because it's absolutely amazing. There's 3 different types of cannabinoids. I listed 2. And the first type of cannabinoid would be endocannabinoids. So endo meaning that we create them inside. How many people knew that the human body creates our own cannabinoids? So then and there, that's pretty magical. So we're creating our own cannabinoids. And then there's this plant that's been put on the planet Earth by whatever you believe in, and it creates phytocannabinoids. So phytocannabinoids are made from plants. The cannabis plant and the hemp plant make phytocannabinoids. So that's pretty cool. So we know our human body's making cannabinoids, and we know that we have a plant on this planet Earth that's making cannabinoids. The third that I didn't mention would be synthetic cannabinoids. Like I said, there's a lot of information, but just to give that information, they are out there. Synthetic meaning they're created by humans. A lot of the negative news that we hear, or I guess I would say like adverse effects that are great or sometimes lead in death, are from synthetic cannabinoids. They've been created from a human. They are not found in nature. So those 2 cannabinoids that the body creates, they're known as anandamide, the bliss molecule, or 2-AG. So those are the 2 cannabinoids that have been discovered that our body makes and are being studied. The plant has over 100 cannabinoids found in it. We're familiar with, let's say, right, 10. Could we maybe say in this room we can list 10? I'm dying to find out what those other 100 are. I think I've seen a chart. But the most known and consumed phytocannabinoids are going to be THC and CBD, which everyone in this room is familiar with, correct? We'll look at THC because that's kind of what this presentation is about. Like, what is the value of THC? Why do we focus so much on THC, right? Well, it's the most abundant cannabinoid found in the cannabis plant, and it's the main psychoactive chemical found in the cannabis plant, and it's the plant that makes you feel high. So that's pretty much why I think it's focused on that much. It's altering our state of consciousness, right? What are the potential medical uses for THC? So it has been studied quite a bit. Chronic pain pretty much is going to be number 1. Neuropathic pain, it's an anti-inflammatory. It's used as an anti-nausea agent. It helps to relax your muscles. It's great for insomnia, MS, so spasticity of the muscles, glaucoma, and cancer. Let's take a look at CBD because that's also one of the most common cannabinoids that we're familiar with and has been studied the most. It's the most abundant cannabinoid found in the hemp plant. So that's what makes hemp hemp. It's primarily CBD. It's non-intoxicating. And so when I use that word non-intoxicating, it doesn't mean it's not psychoactive. The definition of psychoactive is exerting a therapeutic effect in your brain. CBD absolutely is psychoactive and is exerting a therapeutic effect. It's just non-intoxicating. You're not getting high from it. What are the potential medical uses of CBD? I think the one everyone's most familiar with is going to be seizures and epilepsy. CBD is great for helping to treat symptoms of anxiety and depression. It's a major anti-inflammatory. It's great for pain relief and insomnia as well. It's a neuroprotective. It's been studied for individuals that experience symptoms of PTSD. It's been used as a substance abuse treatment, and it helps a lot of patients that have cancer. What are the minor cannabinoids? So now we know there's hundreds of cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, and they're being discovered. We focused on THC and CBD, but there's these array of these amazing minor cannabinoids that a lot of people aren't talking about. And they as well have amazing therapeutic effects, and they're found in the cannabis plant. One of them is going to be CBC. Personally, I've been using some THC CBC gummies, and I wanted to kind of do a little test on myself, and it has definitely helped a little bit with some digestive health. It also happened to be a mood elevator, so that was kind of fun. It was fun to try something that put 2 cannabinoids together and to see what therapeutic effect they exert, right? It's used as an antidepressant. It has anti-inflammatory effects, particularly on acne. I thought that was interesting, kind of looking at like teenagers or like topicals, because as we use these cannabinoids as medicines, they don't always have to be ingested. There's many routes of administration that they show efficacy for. It's great for pain relief. And again, these are just studies that are coming out. There's a very small amount of studies on a lot of minor cannabinoids, but they're starting to become more robust and more abundant. Another one would be CBG. CBG is really special. It's the mother of all cannabinoids. And so every cannabinoid that comes from the plant as it matures comes from this cannabinoid. It's an anti-inflammatory, it's a neuroprotectant. Particularly, it's been studied for efficacy with Huntington's disease and Parkinson's. It's an antioxidant, so it helps to reduce and release stress, a pain relief, an appetite stimulant, so that's really great if we're using it as a medicine, and then anti-cancer potential. I'm careful for what I talk about because, again, this is just science, and we don't want to say that cannabis can treat everything or anything, right? But we are definitely discovering and forging forward and showing that these cannabinoids do have efficacy for some, some pretty major disease states. CBN is, it's the degradation of THC. So has anyone been told like not to smoke old weed? Right? So actually old weed has some great therapeutic effects. So as these cannabinoids degrade, they degrade into other therapeutic values. And CBN is one of those. And so we will see on the market, the CBN has been studied for sleep. It's a sedative. Right? So we maybe do want to smoke or consume older cannabis, right? It's used for pain relief. It also has anti-inflammatory responses, and it helps with appetite stimulation. And then we have THCV. This is another one that we're seeing coming up in the industry. It is being studied for being used as an appetite suppression. So we always know that we're always here like, cannabis gives me the munchies. Well, we're starting to discover that there are cannabinoids and terpenes that actually help and aid in suppressing appetite. Let's see, it's also a neuroprotectant. It's been studied as an anticonvulsant, and it's helped with regeneration of bone health. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but cannabinoids contribute to helping our bones to grow back if they've been broken, and it also helps with mood elevation and mitigating some of the symptoms of anxiety. Terpenes. So again, we're looking at what are the compounds that are found in the cannabis plant. Terpenes are my favorite. I focus on terpenes a lot. Terpenes are the natural aromatic compounds that give cannabis its unique aroma and flavors. And terpenes are not specific just to cannabis. They're found all throughout nature. And I think that's really amazing. When we talk about aromatherapy with plant-based terpenes, I like to talk about walking through a pine forest, right? When we're walking through a pine forest and we take a deep breath, we feel like we can breathe a little better, right? That's the terpene pinene. It's exerting a therapeutic effect in our brain, making us breathe better. It's elevating our mood. It's making us creative. I always get in there and I'm like, oh, let's make a little haiku with all the clovers, right? So it's exerting an effect. So terpenes have been used for centuries for their medicinal properties, and they are commercially used as additives in perfumes and aromatherapy products. So we are familiar with them. And there's different kinds of terpenes. We're talking about plant-based terpenes, so they come from nature. The cannabis plant has many varieties. So chemovars, I'm going to use the word chemovar instead of strain. Again, we're kind of talking about the nomenclature of cannabis, and in the scientific community where I've studied and done a lot of my work, that would be a common word that we would use to replace strain. It would be chemovar because it's the chemical makeup of that flower, that particular flower. They have unique terpene profiles that impact the body and varying mechanisms of action. So we know terpenes, they've been studied for their therapeutic value all throughout in science. We know they exert a therapeutic effect in the body and the brain. Terpenes are intended to work synergistically with the other plant compounds, so cannabinoids and flavonoids and polyphenols and cannaflavins that in turn enhance their effects on the body, and they often are referred to as the entourage effect. And we're going to look at what the entourage effect is on these next couple slides. But basically what we're looking at is, again, cannabis is made of many compounds. Terpenes are my favorite, though, because they smell good. I just wanted to list some of the common cannabis terpenes that we see, particularly in flower or products on the market. Beta-caryophyllene, it's also found in pepper and cloves. So if you like to cook, you familiarize yourself with terpenes because they're found in a lot of spices and herbs. Those aromas would be pepper, wood, and spice. Beta-caryophyllene is good for reducing inflammation. It also has anti-inflammatory effects. It's great for reducing pain and reducing anxiety. Something special about beta-caryophyllene, it's my favorite terpene because it also acts as a cannabinoid, and it is the only terpene that binds to your CB2 receptor, which we'll be talking about. So it exerts a therapeutic effect on a receptor in your brain as well, helping to reduce inflammation. Other familiar cannabis terpenes, we have myrcene, which is found in mangoes and lemongrass. It smells kind of musky and clovey and citrusy. It's great for sedating and relaxing. It enhances the THC psychoactivity found in the cannabis plant, so it gets you a little higher. Has anyone ever tried to eat a bunch of mangoes to get higher? No? Okay. I don't know what, I want to see how many mangoes we'd have to eat. It'd be fun to do a test, right? But I think it would have to be an astronomical amount. But I'm just kind of curious. I hear or read about these different, things that people try. Like, I ate mangoes and got high. And I'm like, oh, yeah? Okay, tell me about that. How many mangoes did you eat? And maybe it's a placebo effect. And that's also powerful, right? So myrcene's also a sedative. It's an analgesic, which means it's a pain reliever. It helps with nausea, and it's a muscle relaxant. One of our also favorite terpenes is going to be limonene. So think of like lemon peel, citrus. Its aromas are going to be bright and clean. It's energizing. It's great for stress relief. It's great for mood and enhancement of your your personality or day-to-day life. It's an antidepressant. It helps with a lot with gastric reflux, so like gastrointestinal discomfort. Also, it's an antifungal, and it helps a lot with reducing the symptoms of anxiety. Pinene, think pine needles and conifers and sage. It's got that pungent, woody, pinene smell. It helps with like alertness and uplifting. Pinene is one of my favorite. It helps with stimulating your mood, making you feel good, and I think creative. So pinene, I didn't write creative on there, but pinene helps to stimulate creative thoughts in our mind or creative tasks. It's a neuroprotectant. It helps with memory retention, and it's a debronchulator. So when I'm looking at all these medical benefits, these are just, again, the beginning of studying these terpenes and their therapeutic effects that they exert. So it's just science, and it's not an exact science. Nothing that I'm talking about is an exact science, but at least knowing the therapeutic value of these terpenes and these cannabinoids, it gives us a little bit of greater idea of how is this product going to react in our body. Well, if we know that it's high in myrcene, right, it's possibly going to be more sedating than this other flower that's really high in pinene, or this other product that's really high in pinene. So a few of my other favorites, linalool. I always go to linalool. Every girl I know makes a lavender bath or has lavender somewhere in their house. That's because it's a sedating and calming terpene. It's been used and looked at as an anticonvulsant, an analgesic as a pain relief for insomnia and stress. And then we have humulene, which is also found in hops and coriander. It's got that woody, earthy smell. It's an appetite suppressant. So if you don't want the munchies, look for products that are high in humulene, right? It's also an anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, pain relief. I shouldn't probably list all these. Here's another favorite terpene I have. It's ocimene. It's found in orchids and mangoes. It's like that floral, zesty herbal, and it's a stimulant, right? So sometimes when we see this in different products, it gives you that energizing buzz and that good feeling. It's also an anticonvulsant, antifungal, and antiviral. And then eucalyptal, I've seen quite a bit. We'll be talking about certificates of analysis. So when we test our flower, and that one's kind of cool. It's found in like eucalyptus and tea tree and rosemary and sage. It's got that pungent minty smell. It increases your respiratory and gastric secretions. So again, it's good for breathing and helping with those stomach issues. And it's an antiseptic and an antimicrobial. The entourage effect. So we've talked about compounds that are found in cannabis. We've talked about cannabinoids and terpenes. And so what is the entourage effect? Well, this is a theory that was presented by Raphael McAloom. He's the father of cannabis, and he adopted this phrase, the entourage effect, to refer to the unique effects produced by the combination of cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids, each with their own unique biochemical benefits. So basically it's THC alone has amazing therapeutic benefits, but when we add all the other cannabinoids, and we look at all the other therapeutic value of the cannabinoids and the terpenes, right? Together, they exert a greater therapeutic effect, known as the entourage effect. So you'll see that on products, full spectrum products, right? That means that all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes are present in that product or that flower. The entourage effect, again, just a little chart that kind of shows how many flavonoids, terpenes, and cannabinoids have been identified in the plant and how they're all synergistically working together. It occurs as the cannabis compounds interact with the body and produce a stronger effect than any isolated cannabis plant on its compound on its own. As cannabinoid receptors are stimulated, a range of psychological processes follow. Right? So we know that they're exerting a therapeutic effect in our brain. Terpenes and cannabinoids and flavonoids are intended to work synergistically together to enhance their effects on the body, and this is, again, often referred to as the entourage effect. I've learned in education, if I keep repeating myself, it becomes second nature, and then we start to really understand and put it together. And then the entourage effect theory can be used as a guide to help patients in purchasing cannabis by looking at the chemical makeup of the flower through the COA, or the certificate of analysis, or by smelling and getting a better idea of the possible therapeutic effects. And we're going to talk about that. The nose knows. This is where my joy comes out, and this is where my love for the plant really comes forth. Because not knowing for so long that knowing that we were meant to use cannabis, knowing that it worked in our bodies, and in being in this industry and having the stigma attached to it, and keeping going forward and pushing this narrative that we are meant as human beings to use cannabis. Why? How? Right? And so the discovery of the endocannabinoid system was revolutionary. The endocannabinoid system was found because of the study of cannabis. And because cannabis is a Schedule I drug, the endocannabinoid system is not talked about and is not taught in medical school. And I think that's really important to remember, that we have many clinicians that are not being taught about the endocannabinoid system. And basically, it is the most important system in our body, and it is responsible for every physiological response that we have in our body. And we absolutely need to know what it is and how it works. And again, that is still going to be forged forward with science. So this is just what's been discovered, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in the future. But the endocannabinoid system is a complex signaling system responsible for regulating homeostasis, or balance, in the human body. So I just want to say that one more time. The system is responsible for creating balance in our body, homeostasis. The ECS is complicated, but research shows it's responsible for balancing the following processes. And I just listed a few, but it's our mood, our metabolism, our inflammation and immune responses, our pain response, our fertility, our bone growth, our gastrointestinal system, our hormones, and our muscles. So it is literally responsible for everything, all of the responses we have in our body. That's magical, right? So what makes up the endocannabinoid system? Well, what primarily makes up the endocannabinoid system are CB1 and CB2 receptors, and those receptors have been the most studied. Our CB1 receptors are primarily found on our central nervous system, and our CB2 receptors are mostly found in our peripheral nervous system. That's also something that's important to remember. No one's ever died from using cannabis, and I'm going to state that and stand by it. Nobody has ever died from using cannabis, and that's because we lack or don't have enough of these receptors on our brainstem, and our brainstem is responsible for our heart and our breathing. So we can never consume too much cannabis and die. It will never stop us from breathing or stop our heart from beating. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with adverse effects, right? And that doesn't mean that it doesn't have interactions with pharmaceuticals, but it's never going to kill you. So we have the longest documented and safest relationship with cannabis of any medicine on the planet Earth, right? But when we look at where these receptors are located in our body, we can see they're everywhere, right? Now, our body obviously doesn't have the endocannabinoid system because of a plant. So we're going to go back to the slide that we talked about with our endogenous cannabinoids, right? So our body is creating anandamide and 2-AG to bind with these receptors and bring our body back to balance. So a good example would be we're feeling anxiety, right? We're heightened, our body's responding, it's feeling anxiety. Our body then creates anandamide and 2-AG, it binds on those receptors, and it slows down our anxiety feelings. It brings us back down to balance, right? Now, scientists and doctors are looking at this, and they're seeing this large rate of disease states, and why are we having such an influx, right? And one of the theories is an endocannabinoid dysregulation. We're not creating enough anandamide and 2-AG in our body to bring us back to homeostasis, right? So when we use cannabis, it is binding with the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and it's bringing our body back to balance. Has anyone ever been curious, like, why cannabis works for so many different symptoms and disease states, from anxiety to lupus to Parkinson's disease to pain to cancer? This is why. It is binding with receptors that are found all throughout our body, regulating all of our physiological responses and bringing us back to balance. So whatever dis-ease or discomfort we're experiencing, and we use cannabis, it brings us back to balance, right? And I'm just generally saying that. We do know that we can take too much cannabis, right, and have adverse effects. And I was watching what kind of words I use, and I wanted to be use the nomenclature and be very in layman's terms, but cannabis is biphasic. And what that means is that in one dose, it'll elicit one response. It'll help mitigate your anxiety symptoms. And then if you take too much cannabis, it'll do what? Give you anxiety, right? So dose does matter. Dose does matter, right? Again, I did talk, but just to reiterate, ECS is made up of CB1 and CB2 receptors. CB1s are primarily located throughout the central nervous system, whereas CB2 receptors are primarily found on our peripheral nervous system. Our CB1 receptors are primarily located in our brain, right? So cannabis does break the blood-brain barrier. Our body makes cannabinoids. They're endogenous cannabinoids. Cannabinoids, 2-AG and AEA, which is a bliss molecule. Those cannabinoids also bind with your CB1 and your CB2 receptors, exerting their therapeutic effects through interaction with the endocannabinoid system, helping to create homeostasis. The cannabis plant also makes cannabinoids that bind with CB1 and CB2 receptors, exerting their therapeutic effect through interaction with ECS, helping to create homeostasis and balance in the body. The art of choosing cannabis. This is the title of my presentation, is the value of potency, right? Now that we have a better understanding of the chemical compounds that are found in cannabis and a generalization of their therapeutic effects, how do we as a consumer bring value to our purchase, right? Because we're just walking into this dispensary, or we have walked onto a farm and we're just bombarded with all these products. What does it mean? How do I choose the right product? Well, we can use a little bit of science, and we can use a little bit of therapeutic value, and we can choose products a little bit more wisely. So the art of choosing cannabis, using the entourage effect is a nuanced and holistic approach to cannabis consumption. So rather than simply just focusing on a single compound like THC or CBD, the entourage theory emphasizes the synergistic interaction of various cannabinoids, terpenes, and other compounds found in the cannabis plant. By selecting strains and products by the chemical makeup of that product and looking to harness the entourage effect, consumers aim to achieve a more balanced and therapeutic experience. This approach considers not only the cannabinoid content, but also the aromatic and flavor profiles of different strains, aiming to optimize the therapeutic benefits and to minimize potential side effects, resulting in a more tailored and enjoyable cannabis experience. Because that's ultimately what we want, right? We want everyone to have a really positive experience with cannabis, and if it's a medicine for them, to continue using it, but using it wisely and using it responsibly. So medical cannabis retail locations are required by law to test all cannabis products by a third party. And this testing results in a COA, or a certificate of analysis. The COA adds significant value to a consumer by providing detailed information about the cannabis product. So I'm a huge fan of a COA. The COA will give a breakdown of the cannabis product's cannabinoid profile, its terpene profile, its potency level, if there's any pesticide residuals or microbial contamination, and the presence of any heavy metals. Cannabis is a bioabsorbent, so that means that it's very good at absorbing everything around it. And that's why it is important to test cannabis, because we do want to make sure that it's not carrying heavy metals, we're not smoking heavy metals, we don't have contaminants like pesticides or bacteria or mold. Consumers can use the COA to understand the specific cannabinoid and terpene profiles and the potency of the product. This information helps consumers to make informed choices based on the desired effects and flavors associated with different strains and concentration of cannabinoids to gauge the strength and to make the more accurate decisions about dosage, right? So if we know what's in the product that we're buying, then we can make more informed decisions and bring more value back to our purchase. So I just threw in an example of a COA. This is public knowledge. So if you do walk into a dispensary, you are allowed to look at this certificate analysis, but you're not allowed to bring it home. So usually a budtender will help you to kind of analyze the certificate of analysis and help you make a better informed choice. I use the hemp COA. We can see over here it lists what its potency is. We can look at its terpene profile. We can see that it passed all of its regulatory safety, and it'll also throw in the moisture level of cannabis. I don't mind dry cannabis, but I know that we definitely want to have a certain moisture level, not just have it fall apart. So this would just be an example of what you would see if you walked into a dispensary. I wanted to also focus on not just purchasing cannabis at a dispensary. There are, in the state of Hawaii, if you have a 329 card, you are allowed to have a caregiver, which means you are allowed to have one person grow cannabis for you. And more so than likely, that cannabis is not going to be tested. So I really wanted to highlight that the nose knows. And this also plays a part in the dispensary. It's really important. If you have a good budtender or retail specialist, they're going to say to you, smell this. And your nose is going to know. It's going to be like, ooh, I like the smell of that, or that is not for me. And if your body likes the smell of it, right, it's part of that process of using this as a specific medicine, you know? Your body's telling you, yes, I need this. This is a medicine I need today. So the nose knows is a long bended tool of the cannabis connoisseur, that was cute, to gauge the aroma, flavor, and even the type of high they're about to experience from their flower. Has anyone in this room ever used the nose? Have you had success?
Yes. Most of the time.
Most of the time. There was a few unexpected smells in there or smokes in there when while nosing, and I just thought this was so cute, can certainly give you clues as to why your experience is going to be amazing. It can also serve to give you key insight as to whether your cannabis is fresh, and in some cases, even consumable at all. So again, our nose is telling us if we smell something rancid or we smell something moldy, that's probably, we're not going to purchase that, whether it is from a farm or whether our caregiver or whether it's from a dispensary. Many adjectives like earthy, citrusy, gassy, and skunky, and several others are used to describe the fragrance of cannabis. These descriptors often match up with the type of terpene profile one may find when they consume it. So recent studies suggest that unlike THC potency, pleasant aroma is a predictor of pleasant subjective effects. So again, using that nose. If we like the smell, we're probably going to have a really good high, good experience, and we're going to have the efficacy that we're looking for, the symptom relief we're looking for. So let's apply the entourage effect. I use this a lot in education because it's one thing to look at a COA, to have someone help you. So I chose Durban Poison, which is a well-known chemobar. Its dominant terpenes are limonene and beta-caryophyllene. Let's see the medical benefits of limonene: help with anxiety and depression, gastrointestinal issues, depression. Beta-caryophyllene is used as an anti-inflammatory, it's an immune modulator, and helps with chronic pain and muscle spasms. So we can kind of look at that and determine, oh, well, maybe the physical effects of these terpenes when they exert their therapeutic effect are going to be an elevated mood and more stress relief. It's going to exert a therapeutic benefit. Beta-caryophyllene is going to exert a therapeutic benefit on the CB2 receptor, and it's going to reduce inflammation. And if you reduce inflammation, you reduce pain. Some of the qualifying conditions in the state of Hawaii that this would be a good product to choose would be ALS and MS, someone who has muscle spasms, rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, cancer, Crohn's disease, pain, and PTSD. And then let's apply that entourage effect. Again, we're just generally speaking, we're generalizing, but we can generalize that Durban Poison will offer patients a relaxing, uplifting mood that may help to alleviate symptoms of anxiety and stress, while reducing inflammation from gastrointestinal issues and relieving chronic pain. So I listed some alternative offerings because when we're looking at, if we're using the entourage effect to choose products, we can then look at other products that have similar chemical makeups, and we can generalize that they will exert a similar therapeutic effect. Okay. So what's the value of potency? Well, honestly, the value of potency is unique to each consumer, and it depends on our individual preferences. You can highlight the significance of terpenes and cannabinoids in crafting a personalized cannabis experience. To sum everything up, that wasn't too scientific, I hope, and so I listed some of the high points of the presentation. So we know that cannabis has served as a medicinal plant for thousands of years. We can see it in archaeological digs. If you come by my booth, I have some really cool articles, one of them being the Siberian Ice Princess, and a few that they think that Italians were recreational cannabis smokers, and they found cannabinoid remnants in their bones. So come on by the booth and check that out. We know that cannabis is composed of hundreds of compounds, all working synergistically together to exert a more powerful therapeutic effect, known as the entourage effect. So this collective interaction enhances the overall impact and benefits of the plant's constitutes, showcasing a remarkable synergy within the complex array of compounds found in cannabis. And so cannabis acts on the same receptors on our endocannabinoid system as our endogenous cannabinoids. So as far as I'm concerned, we're meant to use this plant as a medicine. There is no other plant on this planet Earth that interacts with our endocannabinoid system, our CB1 and CB2 receptors. That's actually not true. I could say St. John's wort and echinacea, but the way that they're used medicinally obviously differs from cannabis, but those would be the only plants on this planet Earth. So we're definitely meant to use this plant. The alignment suggests that our bodies are naturally inclined to interact with cannabinoids, emphasizing the potential therapeutic benefits. And then just don't forget, cannabis is a personalized medicine. Recognizing that what works for one person may not be optimal for another person. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's a tailored, individualized journey towards well-being. And that was I guess my conclusion of my presentation is, don't forget, this is your personal journey, and I hope that this educational knowledge helped to elevate your experience and that you feel more educated when you walk into a dispensary or wherever you're getting your medicine, that you feel more empowered to know, like, this is why I'm choosing this medicine, these are the therapeutic benefits, and based off of either my nose or the COA, I can make a better decision that I'm going to buy this flower because it's high in beta-caryophyllene and I know it's going to help with pain management or gastro issues. And so again, it's just making sure that everyone has that knowledge and elevates their experience. Hello.
Is THC the same? I mean, is THC the standard still yet for potency?
Yes.
Still is.
But the entourage effect and the theory suggests that the other cannabinoids and terpenes can enhance potency of THC. So I look at, and I know this is going to be recorded and I'm not a sports person, but you can look at THC as like Michael Jordan. Like, he's the slam dunker, he's the god, but he's really nothing without his team. He wouldn't exist if he didn't have everybody supporting him and making him greater than he already is. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the theory, right? You know, THC has its potency, it has value, but it's not the overall value of the plant. You know, it's all the other, like I always tell consumers, don't miss out on the sale bin and don't just walk past it because you see 13% THC flower. Say the terpene content of that flower is 2 to 3%. The potency could feel like a 21% flower that you smoked because it's enhancing that potency, it's enhancing that value that THC gives. I found some of my best finds in the sales bin.
Remember to look next time.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate your support.